Now let's finish working on the setup of our foot control. So we're just about ready to run our parent script that will allow us to, when selecting our curve, to automatically select our joint for us. So that's going to be really helpful for selecting our control curve. But let's go ahead and stay organized a bit. Before we get to that, we want to select our curve here, and we'll give it a name, call it CC for control curve underscore R underscore foot 01. And we also go over naming conventions, really handy naming conventions in our quad kit as well. So that's another benefit of that. But once we've managed to do this, we're just about ready to now work on our parent script. What we need to do, once we've established a good rotation for our curve, just making sure that it has been aligned with our foot, what we can now do is go to our rotation and just zero it out. Okay, and this is so that when we do add our script, it will go back to the desired rotation that we'd like it to be in. So once that's been done, we'll also freeze our transformations. After we've zeroed it out, we don't want to freeze it at its angled position, or our curve may not be aligned as we'd like it to. So we zeroed it out, then freeze our translate transformations, and now we're ready to work on that parent script. So let's go ahead and do that. What we'll need to do is go to our command line and type in as follows: parent space dash add space dash shape. So we're going to be adding just this shape, okay, of this object to this joint. So in order to find out what shape that's going to be, we can simply go ahead and open up or expand our object to get to its shape node, double click and hit Control C to copy it, and then we'll just paste it right there in our command line. So we want to parent this shape to this joint. So of course we're going to need to now select the object we want to parent it to. So that's going to be this joint. With the joint selected, watch what happens when we run our parent script. Notice our curve has been properly aligned with the orientation that we gave it, but not only that, notice what's also selected. It's the joint as well. So this is really awesome. And also notice this, our control is still zeroed out. So this is very cool. So now what we can do from here is take this object and simply delete it. So that's this foot control. Okay, we could just go ahead and hit delete. We no longer need that. Don't delete the shape, but the actual foot control. So once we've managed to do that, we now take this object, the joint, hit up arrow to get to the group. Remember, we don't want to move the joint, but rather the group. And now let's vert snap it right where the rest of our other joints are for the ankle. Notice now, as we check out our curve, how it is properly aligned the way we like it to be. Very cool. Great. So now, how about connecting our reverse lock bones to this control? Well, it's as simple as doing a parent. But before we get to that, what we'll do is go ahead and select the curve and just give it a color so we know, so we can easily differentiate which side we're on, as far as just so the animator could easily differentiate what side of the character he's selecting as far as the controls go. So with our control selected, okay, or our joint rather, as we can see, we can hit Control A to get to our attribute editor. From there, we want to go ahead and scroll down till we get to display, and for underneath that, we go to drawing overrides and check on enable overrides. Now what I like to use is a color of red, okay, or a maroonish type of color for the control here. And then with that selected, we want to, of course, bring it over to the right side. So in order to do that, let's go back to our channel box, and we'll go to its group. We'll duplicate the group, and we'll vert snap it over to the left side. So we'll hold V, vert snap, and of course, to get it aligned, rather than using this -12, all we should need to do, if our character is symmetrical, is just get rid of this negative and use the positive. And notice it's aligned just the way we like it to be. And if we go ahead and hit down arrow to get to the joint, notice its orientation is matched up just the way we need it to. And even the translate, if you go to making sure that you're in your local mode for translation, you can see that even the translation has been matched up. So we can really see the benefits of utilizing this type of method for creating controls. Now we have a few things to do on our left side. For one, we need to give everything the proper names. We can do that from our outliner. So we can start from the top, from the group. We could call it foot 01, the R will switch to a L and hit enter. Simple as that. And then everything underneath, we should just need to switch the R to an L. Okay, so we can go underneath that, switch that shape to L. That should be good to go from there. Great. So with all of these things established, we can now go ahead and color this curve correctly. So let's go ahead and do that with it selected. Again, we can use a color of blue. I like to use that. So use this type of blue here. Great. So that's the right side, that's the left. All right, so what's our next task after this is done? Well, we need to work on making sure that it's going to control our entire feet, right? So in order for that to happen, we simply select our control curve. We can start with the right side. We'll select our control curve followed by the base of our reverse lock. So with that selected, we'll hit P. And I do want to mention that when we get to our bank, we may need to do a few other things to get that all set up, but we'll get to that very shortly. Actually, let me go ahead and undo that because I did the wrong connection here. We actually want to go and select our reverse lock, the child first, and then the parent. Okay, and then hit P. So there we are. So now when we select our curve and move it around, notice it's also going to move our feet. Very awesome. Okay, we could rotate it around if we like, and notice everything's moving just fine. And we'll get to setting up things like our foot roll here in a bit. So with that now done, we of course need to do the same thing to our left side. So we'll select the reverse lock followed by our control and hit P. And then we can always test it out, which we should get into the habit of doing, testing everything out to make sure it's functioning properly. Okay, great. So we've made great progress on our rig already. With all of these things here, what I like to do is go to our outliner, open up our character move, our character scale, and make sure that our right and left controls are going to be properly aligned where they need to be as far as the groups go. So that's going to be under control objects. So we'll just control click control objects after these have been selected and hit P. And the whole reason for this really is so that we can have a nice scale. So if we go to our character scale and scale that down, notice everything's going to move pretty well. Of course, our hats stay in there, but that's not connected yet. But that's going to be our objective as well, is to make sure everything is functioning right from our scale to even our move. And if we go to our move, we can still move that around and go back to our foot control if we like to and move our character from here. Okay, so we want to make sure everything's going to be functioning properly. Great. Well, with these things now done, let's go ahead and select both of our feet controls. And with them now selected, we want to get rid of everything that the animator should not see. Okay, so he's not going to need to scale on this control at all. He won't need to necessarily work with the visibility nor the radius. But we'll go from scale to visibility right now, so we could just lock and hide these. So with these from scale to visibility selected, we'll right click and go to lock and hide. And then for the radius, we won't need to see that either, so we could just go to hide. Great, and you could always bring those back from the channel box if you ever need to. So that now done, we also want to make sure we set up attributes for our foot rolls. So let's go ahead and go to modify, we'll go to add attribute, and we'll start working on some attributes for these. So our first one, we can go ahead and give it a category name, which is foot. Alright, so everything under this category will move, like our raised ball, our heel pivot, and such. Okay, so we'll call it foot and we'll make it displayable and we'll just say add. Now we could start adding the attributes. That's going to be our ball or our raised ball raise, whichever you prefer. So ball raise, and we won't give it a min or max. We want total control over it. So we'll hit add. We'll go to the next. We'll call that our heel raise. And we'll go ahead and add that. And we'll label the next one our heel pivot. Add that. And the next one's going to be our bank. And we want to, again, make sure that both controls are selected so we can add all of these at the same time. We'll just hit add. Great. So now our next category is simply going to be toe. We'll make it displayable. Hit add. And for the toe, we'll have our toe raise. Making sure we spell it right. And then our toe pivot. Great. So now we'll go ahead and hit add and close it out. Excellent. So just to recap this lesson before we move on to the next and do our connections and such, we have gone ahead and seen how we can, with a unique orientation, still maintain a clean control curve. So again, I do recommend going over this lesson again if you need to, just to make sure you have this concept locked down. But that completes this lesson, and in the next lesson, that is, we will continue the setup of our foot controls, getting our different foot attributes connected as needed.